We have Scott Bauer, he's the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. He's standing by to talk currencies. And Scott, it's good to have you with us this morning to start the week off. Let's begin with the dollar strength that we're seeing. You know, one of the theories that I have is that this rate differential is keeping the dollar bid, and then when we see the weakness in the British pound or in the euro currency into new lows, that's when the dollar finds the new highs. As the currencies come off those lows, the dollar pulls back, but this has been very characteristic of the bid that we've seen in the U.S. dollar.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, we always talk about this, Ben, the uncertainty that we're seeing over in the EU and in Britain, you know, causing that weakness there. And that's when we see the dollar tick up here. And that's going to continue for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and some of that weakness and uncertainty comes from Boris Johnson. I saw that he recently promised some increased spending, but yet he said he's going to lower taxes. I mean, ultimately that means more debt, if even possible at all.
I mean, he has quite the agenda. I mean, it's a long laundry list. I mean, I know he wants to add 20,000 police to their force within 3 years. Like you said, major tax cut for I think it's like the top 3% or so earners. He wants to pump a ton of government cash into the system to build up infrastructure, to build up broadband. I mean, this all sounds great, but like you said, where are they going to get the cash to do this?
Yeah, at what cost? And I heard what you said in terms of it sounding great, and I'm sort of wondering maybe this is what they need to do to spark growth. I mean, much like our tax cuts and investment into infrastructure, I mean, ultimately that could help.
It could help. I mean, you know, at this point, I'm not sure how much it could hurt other than really plunge that whole area into maybe one of the worst recessions or possibly even a depression. Other than that, though, I mean, I guess somebody's got to come in there and have some pro-growth prospects and an agenda here that at least gives people that, you know, living there an outlook that the economy might be able to get better.
Yeah, tough to do. That is, have an outlook that the economy might get better when there's so much uncertainty related to the outlook in terms of Brexit and conditions here that have yet to come. Let's talk a little bit about a currency or a product that's exhibiting a significant amount of certainty. The yen to the upside, still going. It's interesting because we've got the ES, the NASDAQ, the Dow, the Russell limited relative to what we saw to the downside last week, but yet we continue to see the bid activity in the yen. We've got a chart here with the yen relative to the dollar. It's very strong. It almost looks like gold.
I was going to say it has probably eclipsed gold right now in you know, the here and now as that safe haven trade.
Okay.
You know, and I look at that, Ben, because not that the yen hasn't made a nice run, but gold has made such a run that it might be getting a little tired here in terms of people flocking to it for that safe haven. So where else are they turning? They're turning to the yen.
Well, and one of the reasons we've seen the yen, well, specifically gold, and the dollar rallying was the dovishness that we've seen recently from the Bank of Australia, the Bank of New Zealand. Last week they cut rates, and hints of more cuts to come. Continued weakness, Scott, until we see some progress on trade there?
No doubt about it. And, you know, in New Zealand and Australia, their currency is tied so closely to China that the longer this drags on and the more rhetoric we see, you know, thrown in the media, the worse it's going to be and the more unstable it's going to be.
Let's circle back around to the euro, Scott. I'm not sure how closely you've been following Italy and the whole Salvini story and some of the developments there, but ultimately that's got to weigh on the euro currency. I mean, much like Brexit weighs on the British pound, some of the uncertainty in terms of Italy, while maybe not necessarily the biggest component to the EU's economy, certainly something to keep an eye on, though.
Well, nobody wants to see another country come out and say, hey, we're thinking about leaving the EU.
Right.
Now, you know, I think you have to take this all with a grain of salt. From what I know about Salvini is he's pretty radical. He loves being out there on social media, loves being in the limelight. And, you know, at this point, it looks like he's really just trying to drum up a big cast of supporters, maybe from the far right there. Now, he does have some, you know, some plans that says, you know, listen, if things don't get better, we're going to think about pulling out. And the biggest thing on his agenda is the migrants and how, you know, the ports in Italy, how the migrants just are flocking in there.
Understandably so. Scott, what a difference a week makes. Last week we were talking about the yuan and some of the concerns that had sparked. The indices were selling off as we were heading into the open. How closely are you watching the yuan this week?
So again, this is a case of, the first time that news comes out, the first time there's a shock to the system, there's usually a pretty big reaction. Second time, not as much. Third, fourth, fifth, it's like, okay, now you got to hit me over the head. And what we're seeing right now with the yuan, at least what I'm seeing, is it actually got pegged a little bit lower than it has in the last couple weeks. Yet the spark, the surprise, the shock to the system is not as great. Yes, futures are down right now, and much of that may be on the lower peg of the yuan there. But if this were 2 weeks ago and they had actually pegged it below 7, our futures probably would have been down triple what they are right now.
Scott, I got one more question for you, and then we'll let you get on with your day. We talked about the yen. We talked about the strength we've seen in the gold. The Swiss franc still holding below the June high, but certainly has been a recipient of that flight to quality, that risk-off sentiment as well.
Yeah, no doubt. It's kind of that second tier behind gold and the yen. Yet it's just making that grudging move upwards to the highs that it's shown. And again, it's another safe haven asset.
Yeah. All right. It gives us something to watch. Scott, really appreciate you giving us part of your Monday morning to talk currencies here on the TD Ameritrade Network. Traders, that's Scott Bauer joining us from Prosper Trading Academy.